Hi everybody, a really warm welcome back to my channel, Nelly the Narcissist. Thank you so much for joining today. For anybody new, this is the place where we discuss all things narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic abuse through both the psychological and the spiritual dimensions. Today in this podcast, I will be talking about whether the narcissist can stop doing what they do. Can they change? Can they stop being a narcissist? This question is widely debated. And the first thing that's important to point out is that obviously every single narcissist will be at a different point in their narcissistic personality disorder. Remember, on this channel, I only speak about people that actually have narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not talking about anybody with narcissistic tendencies or narcissistic traits, because obviously we all have varying degrees of that. To sort of demonstrate what I'm actually meaning, imagine that there's a scale of NPD, and as you go along the scale, the further into narcissistic personality disorder you become. And I believe the further that you go, just like walking into a dark abyss, if you go too far, you're basically never going to come back. Now, the psychologist would say that, the narcissist has ventured so far into their mental illness, and then the further that they go, the more likely they will be to have psychopathy, the dark triad, tetrad, personality types. And mentally, they're incredibly sick. This isn't somebody that can be healthy or make any kind of decisions or choices that are based upon a regular, healthy human mind or, the drives of a regular, healthy human. Nowadays, there are actually, self-proclaimed narcissists and even sociopaths on social media that you're going to see. And they are presenting this idea to the world that NPD or whatever cluster B condition that they've got is manageable to the point where they're able to have pretty regular and healthy functioning relationships. I believe that to get to narcissistic personality disorder, because it is a brain damage, and the brain has developed differently to a regular healthy person. Obviously, the narcissist has formed, or they've been created through extreme trauma from a very early age. Trauma and, maybe also a genetic disposition towards developing NPD. But on a spiritual level, I also believe that there is also a predispositioned weakness in their character, to pardon the expression because it sounds like Star Wars, a predispositioned weakness to turn to the dark side. And why do I say that? Because there are plenty of people that have been through absolute hell, like really serious trauma in their early lives. Not only have they not developed NPD, but they haven't developed an inclination towards evil. They don't want to harm others. They haven't lost their humanity. They haven't lost their connection to love and to goodness and to empathy and compassion and all of these things that goes into the making of a real life human being. And many times it's those individuals that have been through so much trauma that you wonder how they're even still existing, that go on to rise and inspire so many people. And these individuals are distinguished by the strength that is within them, that is based upon love. But this didn't happen to the narcissist. And of course, there's going to be a deeper moral, spiritual question here that psychology can't answer, science can't answer. I do believe, as I've always believed, that NPD is a spiritual condition. And I believe that we have to have these moral and spiritual discussions when unpacking NPD, because the nature of human and spiritual corruption comes into this equation. And also, the topic of human evil. And we do need some investigation. I don't see how we can have this investigation without a spiritual context, because it doesn't make any sense without one. Now, in the book People of the Lie by M. Scott Peck, he describes evil as the drive and the desire to kill, but not necessarily physically. But he says that evil is also about that which kills spirits, and it kills your will. And I've said many times before, narcissists are machines for destruction. They wish to destroy, and that's their drive. Whereas a healthy person has an innate drive to love, and they are two completely different forces. And Peck in the book actually quotes from Erich Fromm, who introduces two very distinct character types. Now, the first one is necrophilic. Erich Fromm broadened the definition of necrophilia to include the desire of certain people to control others, to make them controllable, to foster their dependency, to discourage their capacity to think for themselves, to diminish their unpredictability and originality, to keep them in line. And a necrophilic character type basically wants to rob people of their humanity by having absolute control and dominance over them and killing their will, killing their autonomy, and killing their spirit. Now, distinguishing it from a biophilic person, which is the opposite, one who appreciates and fosters the variety of life forms and the uniqueness of the individual. Evil then, for the moment, is that force residing either inside or outside of human beings that seeks to kill life or liveliness, and goodness is its opposite. So the question here is, what actually makes somebody do really bad things? What makes them be able to do really bad things? And more importantly, what makes them want to do bad things and even enjoy it? Because the psychology and, understanding this is a narcissistic personality disorder, it doesn't explain this. Are we meant to just bypass the doing really wrong and doing bad and actually being evil? Are we meant to just not question that and say, well, they just got a personality disorder? To a certain extent, we all have the capabilities to do bad things. But if you're a human being with a conscience, remember Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio, always let your conscience be your guide.
You must learn to choose between right and wrong.
Right and wrong? But how will I know?
How'll he know?
Your conscience will tell you.
What are conscience?
What are conscience? I'll tell you. A conscience is that still, small voice that people won't listen to.
Are you my conscience?
Who, me?
Would you like to be Pinocchio's conscience?
Well,
When you have a human conscience, you won't be able to do evil things because it would stop you. And even if you did do something really awful, that same conscience would make you feel so bad that really you'd be filled with negative emotions and you would wish to repent. To be honest with you, you'd probably hate yourself and you wouldn't want to continue your existence. I believe that the conscience is a part of our spiritual makeup, and it's something that connects us with our divinity. And by the term divinity, what I basically mean is with your true essence of love, the truth of who you are. Without an active conscience and without a connection to this divinity, to love, somebody's dangerous. Somebody's really dangerous. Now, there are a small percentage of people on this planet that don't have a conscience. But to what extent do narcissists not have a conscience? That is something that we can all debate, because even though they are able to do really bad things and they are also able to do evil things without really a second thought. What's interesting to point out that if you were to hold up a mirror to a narcissist and call them out on what they do or what they've done, what would their reaction be? They're very likely to go into a narcissistic rage and they're going to throw up loads of smoke and mirrors because they can't stand looking at this aspect that's within them. They don't want to look at it. They want to run from it. They want to hide it. They want to cover it up at all costs. There is a level of consciousness. There is an awareness there. They know to a degree between right and wrong. They just choose to do wrong, but they want to pretend that they're good and that they don't do anything wrong. They can't stand a mirror to their inner being. They have some conscience, surprisingly enough. It might be so small that you need a microscope to actually identify it, but there is something within them. So there is a degree of conscience there. Now, it's not enough to stop them doing what they do. And afterwards, they're going to reframe the whole thing to tell themselves lies that, they're all right, they're doing well, they're doing good. Nothing that they do is bad. Nothing that they do is remotely evil to anybody. This is the delusion that they need to continue going because they can't face the truth. The chances of somebody with narcissistic personality disorder being able to change their ways is next to zero. And that's actually because the false self is everything. The real self got destroyed and the false self took over. And this is a protective survival mechanism for the narcissist. So if you're asking the narcissist to stop being a narcissist, to change their ways, you're actually asking the narcissist to let go of the false self. But the false self is their protection from the world. It is their protection and way to keep out reality. It's their survival. And that false self is all that they know. They let go of the real self a very long time ago. They don't have a connection to their real self. They don't even know what the real self is. There is no truth or authenticity present. This is the psychology. It's all a delusion. It's a delusion that is built upon a house of cards, because one little blow and the whole thing will tumble down. The narcissist doesn't have access to the real self anymore. So if you ask the narcissist to leave their narcissism and to let go of this false self that they've created that they believe is them, it's their whole world, it's their survival, and you ask them to reclaim their real self that doesn't really exist, I believe it would be way too traumatic for the narcissist, if they have got to narcissistic personality disorder, to ever come out of it. What would be left of the narcissist if you remove the narcissism? An empty shell, nothing, no one. It's the trauma that has created the personality disorder. And it's a highly dissociative condition that was created to keep the individual alive. So if you were to shatter the only structure that they've known and they've built and they're clinging to for the sake of their life and their survival, then the chances of them surviving without their MPD, I would hazard a guess, would be incredibly slim. Too traumatic. So it's hard when someone's entire existence is based upon delusion. Just imagine if you've lived in a la-la land. You have been so shrouded in delusion for the majority of your life. You don't want reality. You reject reality. Reality is not your friend. You choose delusion. To come out of delusion into reality, how much of a shock would that be? So I don't believe that there's any possibility or chance of any narcissist giving up their false self, because that is now who they are. And this has been their coping, defense mechanism to protect them for a very long time. But what they haven't realized, that it may have appeared and it may appear to protect them and help them. But when you look at the patterns that the narcissist is trapped within and the misery that they cause wherever they go, and they don't advance, they just end up at square one the whole time. MPD doesn't actually help them. Yes, it does more harm to others than to themselves. But this condition does also end up destroying them. It's a slower process over time, but by the end, it's not going to be a pretty scene. They think that the narcissism serves them, but it really doesn't serve them in any way. Being unkind, being evil, it doesn't serve anybody. It may seem to have a short-term gain, but that's all just an illusion. Digging a little bit into the spirituality, something that I've observed is that once you've embraced the dark side, it's very hard to turn back. What's the appeal of the path of darkness? Power. Power is the biggest corrupter, in my opinion, of the human spirit, and it's all an illusion, but it's a huge temptation. Anybody that thinks that they're winning with that, when they turn their back away from love, will have a big fall, because power is the temptation, and that's how the darkness creeps in to get you. Because you see, it promises to serve you in all the ways that a human could wish to be served, and it becomes an obsession and delusion that inevitably corrupts the human mind, the heart and the spirit. There is no better visual example of this than in Lord of the Rings with the character Gollum. and seeing what that ring does to anybody that wears it or even holds it or is around it. It takes a hold. Now, even the strongest of people are tempted, and the goodness in them has got to be a lot stronger than whatever it is that that ring is seducing them with. But it's a very fine line, and the more that you go into it, the more you're seduced by it, the more corruption becomes of you. And the further and further away from the truth of who you really are, you go, to the point, if you allow it to go on for too long, there's no coming back.
I'm giving it to you.
Don't tempt me, Frodo. I dare not take it.
I will give you the One Ring.
In place of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen! Not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the dawn! Treacherous as the sea! Stronger than the foundations of the earth! All shall love me and despair!
Remember, as I'm sure many of you do, watching all of the Disney films when I was growing up, and they always, just like all of, the film narratives or book narratives, they have the antagonist, the protagonist, good versus evil. When you become more adult, you start to open up that dualistic thinking, and perhaps, you start to think, well, there's many shades of grey. It's not just black and white. It's not just good and bad or good versus evil. And there is a spiritual saying that a saint can be a sinner and a sinner can be a saint. That's true. But there are more stories of those that are good becoming corrupt than there are the stories of those that are already corrupt becoming good. And why is that? Because I believe it's much harder, like I said, the more that somebody embraces darkness, the less chance that they have of coming back to return to the path of love and of light. The darkness is afraid of the light, you see, and doesn't want to be seen. But the light is not afraid of the darkness. From meeting a narcissist, even though no matter who they are, they're going to show signs of what appears to be real humanness and real vulnerability and connection, we can forget who they really are or what drives them to be as they are. It's really difficult to make someone good that is inherently bad. And I've tried multiple times, because you don't actually want the person that you love to be unredeemable. You want to find the good. You want to find the reasons why they're like the way they are, why you should be with them, why you need to help them. And it's actually really difficult to come to terms with the fact that just as some people have inherent goodness within them, some people too have inherent badness within them. And there's actually nothing that anybody can do to make them inherently good. And that's the difference. And I think for many people that have come into close contact with narcissists, it makes you realize that those Disney films with the good versus evil approach, they weren't so simplistic and far-fetched as you thought. And I think people can become aware that there really are two forces at play, and they're doing battle with each other. It is my belief that once the narcissist has taken the hand of the opposition, the other, then they're walking down a very dark road that will lead them further and further into losing their minds. Because like seen with Gollum, when you embrace that energy and it becomes a part of you and it governs you, it not only, corrupts your soul and heart, but you lose your mind. This is a complete loss of self, like seen with the narcissist. And once the corruption starts, it really only leads to further corruption. And although it appears to give some delusion of power, it's not. It's destroying them and everybody else. For a narcissist to give up this delusion that they are godlike, that they are supreme and all-powerful, and they are nothing to do with humanity, this would be a huge fall for them. It's not attractive. They don't want to be human. They don't want to be like everybody else. They want to be separate. They want to be on a higher level. They want to be the ones in power. And they don't want what they perceive to be human weakness. They don't want to be human beings like everybody else. They've got it into their heads from somewhere that love is not the answer. Love's the enemy. Love needs to be destroyed. Being a good person, being of love, it doesn't have benefits. Obviously, this is wrong and this is a delusion, which keeps them going and will keep them in misery for the rest of their lives. If you're considering staying with a narcissist in the hope that they're going to change or that they can be managed, please don't destroy yourself, because it's not worth it. And being with them will destroy you. I'd love for narcissists to change their ways and embrace love. Not only would it save a lot of people around them, but it would give the narcissist the hope of real life, where they'd have life, love, happiness, real connection, satisfaction. But it's been my experience that no matter how you wish that, it's highly unlikely to ever happen. So please do share this message with anybody that you think it would help. Like the video, and if you haven't subscribed and you'd like to subscribe, then please do. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care, sending love, and I'll see you all again next time.